The trip.
Oh, okay. Did you email that to us? Yeah.
Awesome, everybody. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. First is approval of the agenda and any late items, which we have a few.
We have at least 2 late items. There's the privacy policy circulated by email. With our item 5.6.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ready for recommendation yet, is it? Maybe we'll
I think
see.
it's close.
Close, okay. And then we have a draft job description, which was my miss. We'll try to give that about 10 minutes. And 6.1 under other business. I'll pop that 5 minutes up a little bit and maybe we need to follow up on that time wise. That's all I have.
Anything else?
I thought, sorry, either from Kim or Mimi would be the comparative facility rates.
Is there documents on comparative?
Right, I'd given a draft to you, Jillian, and to Mimi, but it's still in draft stage. So I don't know if it's ready to be officially submitted to the committee, and that's just, but I can go over what it's going to have on it and have it prepared for the next meeting.
Okay. Sometimes with draft, we'll do a share screen rather than circulating it. Do we feel it?
Yes, sir. It's more of an email. I don't think it's,
I'm seeing an email of proposed items for fee structure based on cost from May 28th. At the very end of that, there's a couple of breakdowns. Is that the one we're talking about?
No, I did another one where I actually had some other numbers from other facilities, but I hadn't pulled it together yet from the documents. The information is there. It just hasn't been put into one single document on a single page for comparative reasons.
Okay,
I can pull up that email and we can discuss it.
I'll do that if I want to do that.
Well, no, it's part of, yeah.
Okay, so as amended, are we okay? Does anybody move to adopt the agenda? Need somebody. Thank you, Judy. Seconded?
As amended?
As amended, yeah. And all in favor?
Fine.
Okay, adoption of last minutes. Any problems or changes? Anybody move to adopt? Judy, thank you. And seconded? Mimi, thank you. All in favor? Great. Nice and quick, thank you, everybody. Okay, public comments. Anybody from the public going once? Do we have anything online? Going twice. Okay, so on to preliminary discussion. Facility update and operational requirements. Jillian.
Well, the exciting news is the contractor is continuing to be committed to this handover date of July 19th. So that's exciting. And the work that's going on inside the facility is pretty amazing. You know, it's very different when you go in there now. The flooring, the sprung-wood flooring is in the different rooms. The acoustical treatments are in all over, and it's really getting very close. The millwork is in mostly, doesn't have the countertops, but so it's really coming close, right? Which is super exciting, but at the same time, now we're starting to feel the pressure, right? Of needing to have all of our pieces in place in order to open up this facility. Right? So just wanted to talk just a little bit about some of the work that's also been going on in order to have those operations working. So for example, I've mentioned before the facility manager software that we purchased and are working on putting together for that. So that's a big infrastructure piece that needs to be in place in order to do a single booking in any room, for example, right? Then there's all sort of operational pieces that we have to put together, like rate sheets and the physical representation of like this facility rentals document for the public, a brochure, like there's various things that need to be put together that are slightly held back by a lack of decisions, right? So for example, we couldn't finish developing the software because we don't have things like rates. So we're really hoping that today we can come out of this meeting with some firm decisions from this committee that then we can turn around quickly and get to council. And so that we're on track for being able to have these decisions made. We will be going over the schedule of that later, but we're coming up pretty tightly against council meeting deadlines in order to have this ready for the facility opening. So the content that we're discussing today, like we've built the structure to put in the content that we're going to discuss today. So you'll notice that the agenda this time was not subcommittee reports, because the reason for that was that these documents that the subcommittees work together to create are sort of the fusion of all the discussions taking place at that subcommittee level. So it made more sense to do that document review. And then we can take the relevant pieces from those and plug it into the rental policy, take all the relevant pieces and plug them into these other structural components that we've been working on. So that's all I really want to say with all of that. And then, fingers crossed, we agree on these things, and then we can have rental procedures done and make the council have hopefully proposed rates that we can then take forward to council too. So it's I know it's ambitious for today, but hopefully we can do that when we get there. I know that's not much about what's going on with the facility now, but but I also, I think there's a lot of people here who haven't been in a while, so we'd love to take you on site again, and so you can see and get excited. Like Fraser was there on Friday, right? Right? That's how you walk out feeling about it, right? It's awesome. So,
maybe just a couple of technical things for folks. So last week were some significant milestones that occurred. So one was the air source heat pump was put into place and was largely connected up. And then most significantly, the BC hydro power pole was completed on June 6th. So the building's energized, and the power is being tested out on all the different elements, and hopefully the air source heat pump will get connected up shortly with the power, so then the facility will be completely standalone for heat, cooling, power, water's connected up. And so those are pretty significant milestones. And the septic field work is ongoing, and all of the critical path pieces are underway and seem to be holding to schedule at the moment. But we all know how construction can go, and especially being on an island, so it's very exciting and encouraging. There's still a month and a bit to go.
So beyond that, sorry.
What would be the deadlines? Okay, council meetings are June the 24th, July the 8th, and July the 22nd. So what are the deadlines in terms of having stuff ready for them?
Well,
A week ahead?
our
10
council
days?
procedure bylaw requires that we post the agendas a week in advance. So the agenda would be posted on July 2nd because the 1st is a holiday. And so we would need the materials to be ready for July 2nd agenda posting. Typically, we have the materials actually ready a week before that for staff review and the agenda review with the mayor. So that would be June, I think 24th, 25th. And so ideally, we would have the materials ready by then for the agenda posting. and going on the July 8th meeting. And that would allow council then to have some deliberations and to be able to say, well, we want some tweaks and some amendments. And for it to come back on the July 22nd meeting, we would be having to ask mayor and council for the ability to bring it back as a late item, because getting something turned around for the next council meeting is very difficult because it's such a tight turnaround to meet the general operating procedures. So
So that's 2 weeks. From today. Okay,
It's doable.
Any other questions? My question was, so other than, community rec type programming, do you have any kind of timeline as to when things might start happening with, user groups in the community?
That's been one of the most difficult questions to try and
Asking it.
answer, hasn't it? I know. It would be great to say, this fall, we can, and I think it's realistic to say this fall, but defining it within the fall would be a little more challenging. That makes enough.
It's Kim here. We've got some people who've already requested dates from the fall, at least I have. So those dates are already, people are waiting to find out how much we're going to charge and what the process is. So I think once we have those in place, I think that the response will be relatively quick, because there are a lot of people in the community, not lots, but I've got at least a half a dozen people who I know are waiting to hear what the rate is going to be and what the process is going to be. So it's a bit of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? I mean, we could reach out to.
I think it's the chicken.
Yeah.
The chicken comes first. Oh,
If
good.
the chicken is
So-
the rate sheet and the
Yeah.
process, then the chicken comes first.
Right, and then people will book, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think the question was more about when Sylvie would be ready to host.
Yeah.
So from an opening perspective, I think it's been communicated before that if the handover does occur July 19th, we likely won't be moving in right away. But we're tentatively scheduling a move-in for the end of July. And then we will likely be in the facility at least for a couple of weeks before it's actually open to the public. Because, we want to make sure that it's operating in the way that it should be, and we understand the facility and how it works. And so tentatively, we'd be opening the facility, mid to late August for public use. And we imagine that the initial uses will be pretty sort of standard programming and
Like rec program,
like rec programming and other types of
after school
programming.
programming and all that.
Yeah, well, school will be September, but yeah, so.
It still takes some turnaround in order to schedule and plan.
Yeah. So it'll be a slow ramp up. It's not gonna be like open the doors and we're in full swing and but to Kim's point, we do know there's a lot of interest and Jillian's getting questioned daily about this stuff. And so the sooner that we're able to nail down these core procedures and rates, then the sooner we can start responding to folks about, we can start tentatively booking things. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? We are a minute ahead of the schedule. Let's move on to 5.1, rental process and rate categories. It's another.
Well, and Lee, but this is most definitely, this is Gail and Jamie been all involved with this too, so it's definitely a discussion for us all to lead, but I think we're actually best off literally going through this document together and making sure we agree with all the numbers that you see in there and the concepts. One thing that I put at the top just to note is that this really is just a document informing how we build out the other things. So anything from this will go into the rental policy. From this goes into ActiveNet. So this is just to get it in one place, what the intention is here.
Okay.
So I think the last time we came to you, there was a discussion about the possibility of two priority, like 3 priorities or 2 priority groups. And the discussion was to have it as 3. So I'm not sure what the best way to go through. I don't want to read it out to everybody, but
You can.
Yeah.
I think so. If you guys are okay with that, we've done that for the accessibility group.
okay.
Sure.
Yeah, you read through.
I'll read, sure. So one of the things that we talked about in our group is the different names for priority groups, rather than using first, second, and third priority, having different names. So you'll see here that we've added names for them, where we're not sure how we will go forward with them though. So we're looking for input there. The following describes the users of the BICC and their rights of first booking of BICC rooms and facilities. So first priority or internal users. Following users will have first access to booking the rooms and facilities of the BICC subject to the process described in the project memorandum of understanding dated January 7th, 2021. So that's the municipality, community rec, and the Hearth Arts on both. Internal users can place holds without paying a deposit up to 24 months before the first rental date, hold up to 6 months before the date, and then can be released without penalty at 6 months. Conversion to a booking is required. As per the memorandum between them and the Hearth, Hearth is a principal user, will work with BICR rec to ensure that arts programming needs are met during the over scheduling of the facility. Any questions about that? So one of the things that we talked about was what priority looked like, and so what we said is that it's access to booking, and it's the time, how soon, how in advance you can book or place holds on rooms. So that's 24 months. Second priority or community groups. The following users will have access to booking the rooms and facilities of the BIC after internal users. Community groups can hold rooms up to 21 months in advance, so 3 months after the internal. Community groups that are groups that provide services or programming to the community members of Bowen Island. These groups can be arts-based, performance-based, culturally significant, recreational, environmental, or other groups. So we have examples here. We'll probably not include these in the actual document, but this is who we're thinking fits into these groups. So Theatre on the Isle, Fire, Right on Bowen, Up the Zoo, Sherry Ulrich, the Film Society, Fix It Fair, things like that. Things that are Bowen based for Bowen people. Third priority, we don't have a good name for it yet. These users will have access to booking the rooms and facilities after the first and second or internal community groups and up to 18 months in advance. So another 3 months. 3 months below the community groups. And this is private booking and commercial booking. So weddings, birthday parties, celebration of life, for-profit events, which are events with sales. Do we want to chat or just keep going? Just keep going.
So quick question, if you don't mind. So you've got for the first priority group, the hold for 6 months before the date, and then it has to be converted. Does that same thing apply to the other two?
Yeah, so you'll see here in the booking room that this is the process for everybody essentially, except for these internal users, they get slightly different.
And the intention there being so that, we're not just all holding a whole pile of dates that aren't really going to be
Oh, the
used.
6 month thing, yeah.
Yeah, and the part about be released without penalty is just that we're not going to fine ourselves if we don't use that.
So booking a room. So the Bowen Theatre, as per the MOU, is understood that it is the Bowen Theatre, also known as large multi-purpose room, will be heavily used by the Hearth Arts on Bowen, Bowen Community Rec, and the community for a variety of functions. Programming of the theatre will be guided by an understanding that priority is to be given to arts and cultural events and programs. Minimum rental period is 4 hours, the option of additional 1 hour increments. I'm not sure that we need this part.
So this question of mine, for rentals booked within 3 months of the start of the rental period, the minimum can be lowered to 2 hours as an minimum.
It's good, it's clear.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's not been booked in 4-hour segments yet,
Okay.
then
And just so people understand, the intention there is that, the 4 hours is, holding that space, for productions, but we don't want to, lose the opportunity for people who don't want that full 4-hour block to be able to book it as well. We don't want to lose that opportunity in terms of filling the space and providing it to people. But we don't want to lose the opportunity of a performance type of event because we've booked it out for an hour for a show.
So we'll fill in spaces.
Exactly, it's filling the gaps.
Like an AGM or something. that
Exactly.
You need 2 hours.
Yeah.
A community group may book no more than 2 weekends in a month. To hold a rental, a deposit of 50% of the full rental fee must be made. Deposits are only accepted as holding a rental up to 6 months before the first day of the rental period. Rental holds must be converted to a booking. So that's pay the full. Must be converted to a booking 6 months before the first day of the rental period. To book a rental payment, full fee must be made to the ICC. So essentially you can hold it for 50% up to 6 months. As you get to 6 months, you either pay for the rest of it or you get partial refund.
I have a question about that. So is that, and maybe Kim can answer that too. Is it normal to pay upfront 6 months before renting to pay the whole fee?
Yeah.
What if you're selling tickets and you haven't started to bring in the revenue that you need to pay?
From what I could see, actually, I'll let. Sorry,
Kim?
Kim, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's some flexibility in that. It depends on who the user group is. For example, on your internal ones, or if it's a regular user, we just require a deposit because also there's a reconciliation, right? By that, I mean, you're right, they're getting their revenue later. However, if it's a first-time renter, someone we don't know, we end up requiring a full deposit for the rental fee up front because we've had experience of people canceling, right? And then we're kind of hooped because if we keep our deposit really, really low for a first-time user, we found out that they will book, they'll put a hold on it, they'll also have a hold on another place, and then we get dumped. So there's flexibility in that. And I just think that's really important that there is flexibility there rather than having a really ironclad hard policy, because you end up having to adjust that. Like if you're really lenient, you're going to find people will take advantage of it. And if you're really, really strict on it, then you'll be asked, people who are your regular users are going to come forward and say, well, it's really hard for us to cough up with that money that far in advance.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah.
So I think we have two options, right? We either have it here as 6 months, knowing that we may apply flexibility, but it's what's in our policy, or we revise it right now to change that and build in language that addresses this.
So rental holds must be converted to a booking 6 months before the first day of the rental period, unless there's agreement with the booking agent, the facility manager, what?
unless otherwise arranged,
Sorry?
unless otherwise arranged.
Okay, so who's agreeing? Who's arranging? Who's doing the booking in the first place?
There's the $64 question. So
Okay,
what
so
we're,
that's gonna be the booking, what is that position called?
The event coordinator.
But it's in the end, it's probably, okay, let's not go there right now because that's 6.1, item 6.1. So on to back to the policy. I actually just think the amounts are wrong. Honestly, I don't think we should necessarily have a variable policy at the beginning. I think that when you put a hold, it's a 25% of the fee. That's your hold when you book it. you pay 50. And then closer to, you pay your other 50, because who can afford that 6 months out? I think it's problematic. But that's just my opinion. But I'm proposing a different fee structure. I'm not actually super inclined to go with and then be fluid with it. I mean, we might end up having to be fluid. I actually think, Kim, you're probably on to something that will need to be, but I'm not sure that's what we should do right now. I think we should come up with something that's a little more user-friendly and then introduce exceptions when we have a booking agent or our booking manager.
Okay, so what's more user flexible?
I was just saying, like, when you make a booking to put a hold at 50% is a pretty steep amount. I've never quite heard that one. I would go with 25. And then when you, at 6 months, if you want to hold it, you want to book it, maybe, Kristen, you're here, maybe you know this better, but I was thinking more like 50%. And then as you get closer, you'd have to, I don't know how you close the deal. That's maybe the next person could put that forward. Is the closing of the deal 3 months before, 1 week before, or is it on the close, like in the week of the, most people won't have a revenue production yet.
It takes a few days to pay out for a deal, for example, right? So.
There's another issue there as well, and that is that people, when they're, depending on what the activity is, they can run into using the space more. So there's always a reconciliation that happens like after the event has happened. And that's important as well. So for example, if they've ended up using it a little bit more, if they've left a damage deposit that needs to be collected. So it never can be reconciled completely prior to the event happening. So you're looking at 3 stages, and I agree with Gail. If we can put it in a clear policy right now by moving it to 25% and then 50%, and then the more important issue is how is it being managed, because there will be flexibility on the policy, but it's good to have a clear, simple policy to start with. But there will be, just keep in mind, the reconciliation is going to happen after the rental is done.
So can we put a timeline on when that balance is, recognizing that there still may be work that's done after the fact, but would we say a month before, 2 weeks before?
I think what he's saying is that reconciling can't happen until after the booking is completed, because like there might be a cleaning fee and it would get.
No, I recognize that, but what I'm saying is that they're still only paid 50%.
You have to pay for the full rental before the event occurs. You can't be like charging people after the fact.
And trying to collect from them after.
So you have to collect 100% of the rental fee prior to the event occurring.
I just have to say that we never do that. You're depending on what it is, but if someone's renting it for a significant event and they owe money, we get a deposit and then we have a reconciliation on the day that the rental is when they're completed, right? So it's a little unrealistic to think you're going to get 100% of the rental, and it's administratively complicated because then you're trying to write it off on your close the contract a week before. And then what do you do with all the additional costs or things that didn't work out the way they were supposed to? Right? So it's an administrative thing.
I mean, well, like it's in the world of construction. I mean, like we deal with holdbacks and lien holdbacks all the time. Like it's
but you also have a 35-page. You have a 35-page contract that covers all of that stuff.
No, right? It's a simple. It doesn't have to be a 35-page contract. It's not a difficult thing to, and I think what I'm hearing is like we're concerned about some of the user groups that don't have the cash flow that can support this kind of an approach. But there's a lot of user groups where I would think this kind of approach would make complete sense, right? Like, so if you're a private entity that's renting a facility, or like you're having a wedding, like I'm pretty sure you'd be paying 100% upfront And there'd be a damage deposit that would be held to ensure that the facility wasn't damaged and that it's cleaned up and all the other expectations have been met. And that gets released after the fact.
Mhm.
pretty-
And that,
that's pretty-
yeah,
That's
that's
pretty
really good.
standard. Pretty standard operating procedures for any kind of facility.
And
so-
well, I just have to say, not any kind of facility, but the way around this maybe is that when we're dealing with performing arts groups versus the other kinds of rentals, and this just makes a stronger case for the hearths approach, which is to have a coordinator who maybe does a more block booking and then is managing it in a different system. So if, for example, the hearth is an internal user, does a larger block booking, and then they can manage those user groups within it in a different way.
Yeah,
That
or
might
maybe
be a
it's the
solution.
first priority groups have a different
Yeah.
rate or schedule of payments than like the second and third. And so the first ones have something that's more along the lines of 25, 50, 75, 100 or something like that, like to be a little more flexible. But I would not be wanting to try to reconcile payment with a wedding party after they've trashed the place.
Yeah.
So.
And
Depends
not
on
on
the
their
ticket
honeymoon.
sales.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there ticket sales involved? And if there is, then obviously that model,
Yeah.
collecting it as we go along closer to the date makes sense.
But again, it depends on the entity, right? Like, so if we're talking about, like a Kelly Kono dance production, then that makes sense that, it may be difficult to expect 100% right up front. But if we're talking about some sort of off-island production, that's not to say that Kelly Kono is not professional, but a very professional, high performance production, then they should have the cash flow to be able to float that.
Well, actually, they won't. Just so you know, that's not how that industry operates at all, Liam.
But what
So
are
I
we
think-
talking about, like in terms of
Let's talk about the web.
rental rates, right?
Just keeping an eye on time here as well,
Yeah.
everybody too. We got about 3 minutes left on this. I think we're gonna need more time on this, but let's just.
Actually, may
hands up
I
and
make a
stuff.
proposal? May I make a proposal? I think Liam's right. I think what you need to do is put in here something really simple that's a blanket thing and not try and adjust it to accommodate performing groups, because all the performing groups, particularly if professional work that's coming from off island, is going to be represented by somebody. And they'll have an other structure about how to deal with it. So this is actually about how the municipality is getting money to run the facility, and not how a performing arts complex is going to run, right? So this is broad. This covers all user groups, including recreation, and the internal user groups about how they do business with the city. So in that case, I think the document is fine, because people do want to pay upfront for what they're booking. It's like leasing or renting, and not try and accommodate the practice of a performing arts center within this part of the document. That's would be my quick solution.
Judy.
I had a few notes and edits. So I'm going to suggest that, and I think there's a real difference between the commercial and the, a couple of points. I don't know how you do an 18-month thing for a celebration of money. But, other than that,
Fair.
I think that, there's some distinctions to be made. So, one of the things that Tony's been doing is saving up a whole lot of money, because we know that this is going to be more expensive, so that we can, I didn't know that this was going to happen, but, theoretically, we're in a good position to be able to follow this, but that's going to be an exception. And we have to have a plan B, I think. So let's table this for now, play with it. And is there any way that we can get, I'll talk to you later, Steph, if I may, in terms of getting a document that I can actually edit. That may be my technical.
Word document?
Yeah, something like
I can
that.
send you.
Okay.
Kristen?
Let's, I've already played with this a whole bunch, so I'm willing to make a crack at it and give it for you guys that see whether or not that helps.
I'd also just like to bring up some of the language that's very restrictive, like a community group may book no more than 2 weekends in a month. And I wonder if we might take a more permissive approach, such as a community group may be restricted to no more than, and have that option, because I'd rather rent it to the same group 4 times in a month than have it sit empty any month of the year.
Maybe restricted.
Yeah, the use of may rather than shall is always preferred.
And actually, I think that might have been a typo. I think it was about holding it rather than fully booking it, isn't it? So it's not, so a group doesn't say, oh, I might have the production on any weekend this month, so I'll just hold them all.
That's right, Jillian. It was about holding and
That's the
not booking.
intention.
Was about. We just didn't want 18 months out, someone hold the entire month,
Right.
and then we couldn't book anything else in there, but yes. But I like how you said that may be restricted, but.
So with time in mind, Judy, our current recommendation is that we present this as complete. I don't think we're there yet.
Can I just take one stab at it being complete in terms of those amounts? Just one stab. What happens if we keep the internal user group as is, right? Number 2, community groups. We change that one to this 2550 and then close it at 1 week out. And then leave group 3, private and corporate commercial, as it is in the document. Maybe we've done everything there. Because if we leave 1 as is, it will follow number 2, except that you don't, the BIM, Hearth, and Community Rec don't need to actually pay a deposit. That's the only difference, right? But it would follow number 2. Number 2 would be this, like what I had proposed, which was 25% for a hold, 50% for a booking 6 months out, and then by 1 week ahead or 2 weeks ahead, whatever Liam is recommending, somewhere we close it prior to the use. And that's community group, priority group 2. And then the 3rd group, we just leave it exactly as it is. And then we sort of addressed each of those, what's been brought up around the table. And we can walk away with this because these guys cannot finish ActiveNet if we bring this to a month later meeting.
Trained people and all.
Yeah.
Well, we can't do a month later. We got 2 weeks to get this done. So
Exactly.
And I also suggest that council will probably have edits as well. So whatever's coming off this table, it's gonna get mucked around with. So let's get it there.
okay, just one last thought. If you had a show happening and then it got canceled last minute because everybody got COVID, but you've already paid that full fee, is that refundable?
So that's in the rental policy,
Okay.
not the rental procedure. So in the policy, there is a mechanism for like acts of God and like that sort of stuff where something out of your hands, like if COVID happened again, obviously.
And there is a deposit as well, a damage
Damage
deposit,
deposit,
which is separate from the facility rental fee.
Yeah.
Okay. Could we, one adjustment to what you're saying, could we say 2 weeks rather than 1 week out?
I said
Because-
1, 2, whatever Liam recommended.
We can go with that, hold 25%, book 50% balance.
100%. And then his 3rd one is staying the same, 3rd category. And was there a second document you want to look at in this section?
Well, we're still in it,
Okay, for the purpose of our timeline, we gotta keep going for this, I think, because we've got a lot to go, and given what we're doing later, I think we need to focus on this. So are we okay to keep going on this stuff right now?
On this
On
one,
on what we're talking about right this moment?
there's not a ton more, to be honest.
Well, there was the
Just
flex
do-
group, yeah.
Yeah, there's the next. So the only thing I didn't read from this so far is if the rental is canceled by the renter with a minimum of 90 days advance notice, the first day of the rental period, partial refunds will be given, withholding 15% of the full rental fee for administrative costs. Refunds are not available for cancellations with less than 90 days notice. Except for as stated in the rental period. Flex room, community meeting, community conference, fitness studio, living room and courtyard. Minimum rental period is 2 hours, and then an hourly additionally. Same with the 3 months, you can just do 1 hour. so this, I presume we'll change this to follow along with the other. So instead of it's positive 50%, it'd be 25%. And then at 6 months, 50%, then at 2 weeks before full. This one is a rental, so the cancellation is 30 days for these ones. I think we thought it was because they're slightly less complex renters and they'll be able to fit people in more easily. I'm not sure if we want to go with that or if we want to keep it simple and follow the same as the theater.
I think a more relaxed cancellation period is warranted for these types of rooms.
And do we want to go 30-day? Do we want to go 14? Do we want to go? I've seen it, so I've read a lot of rental things and it's all over the place. Like it sort of depends on what people want. Some people do want full payment, but that's like the Queen Elizabeth Theatre, right? Some people don't.
I think this is where the person who's booking, the person who's communicating with the renter can have that flexibility. If something comes up within 2 weeks of a rental, something like the ferry's canceled or whatever, and you know that, and you're relying on people coming onto the island, you give that person, that staff person, the flexibility to say, yeah, sure, it's okay. I don't think it's gonna happen a lot.
I don't think so either. But
The community meeting room is the one by the. What are these rooms? The community meeting room is the chambers
chambers,
and
yeah.
community conference room is the one by the
no,
kitchen.
community
Oh,
conference
wait,
is
wait, wait.
changers, community
Chamber?
meeting is the kitchen.
These are all
So
small.
like if
rentals,
people coming
too.
across from
Yeah.
town to.
Yeah, these are much smaller.
And they're all local rentals.
It'd be
Yeah.
pretty
I
much.
think it would be really easy on their cancellation. There's not gonna be a huge lineup.
For the kitchen?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
kitchen on.
No, but it's just,
I mean, I feel like a week seems
Yeah.
fair.
So how about start with 2 and it's easier to always let your socks down and pull them up. That's it.
And you can't fill something within 2 weeks. You're not losing a lot because it's not a big rental. Right, no, but I'm saying is you lose the ability to fill it. Especially within a week. Yeah, a week is totally. So 2 weeks?
14 days.
Okay.
You did a lot of work on definitions.
I did?
Oh, I thought you did.
Well,
Essentially, we just changed a few to clarify.
yeah, I don't know if we need to go through the definitions here. I think like talking about those numbers and dates and things was the really key stuff. So this is just more informative. If that's okay with everyone, you just skip that. Okay.
Rate category.
Great categories. So as you notice, those user groups and that process has nothing to do with how much you pay, right? It was only about how you come about doing it. So we talked at the full committee level about these 3 different types of groups: community group, private, and commercial. So what we've done here is the first bullet is how we had defined it. But then I just we pulled in a little bit of other language from other places. If there's, like, if it feels like it's not clear enough within our definition, if we want to adjust that a little bit. But essentially the idea being community groups, these are all of our local groups that are running opportunities for the community essentially. And we've been saying that we would not require proof that they're registered charity or society rather, charitable organization. But just that is they do have a not-for-profit mandate doing that. We just have some other examples if people want to be more particular about how we define that. Because these are, this is then influencing what they do pay. So the private.
Sorry.
Even silence.
private or individual business or private groups hosting an event not open to the public. And then the top one being commercial for-profit events held by commercial entities. The piece that's a little bit of an anomaly in this are weddings. Right, by this description, they fall into the private category. A lot of facilities have a very specific rental rate for weddings and the rental package, and maybe that's addressed as a package, or it's a surcharge, or in some way recognizing like weddings are just an awful lot of work and cleanup and all of that. So it shouldn't necessarily be the same rate as a birthday party. So we hadn't actually figured out, would we do surcharge or what that might look like, or so I was just flagging it there. So do you feel we should be like laying out more clearly what these are, community groups, private and commercial, or the first bullet underneath each one suffices?
Were we not going to differentiate between local community groups versus external community, not-for-profit organizations?
I can speak to that, if you don't mind, Jillian, because we had a discussion about that. I think what we realized is that all not-for-profit or community groups are going to have a connection to the island. So we didn't see how an off-island community group would be in a different category. So although we understood the idea of a quote unquote discount for people on Bowen Island, the core use of the space is for the benefit of people on Bowen and connected to the community. So I think Jillian and I thought it was just unnecessary to have that distinction. So instead of having 6 categories, in each category, it was like community group for Bowen, and then a community group that wasn't on Bowen, or a private group that was on Bowen and a private group that wasn't on Bowen. And same thing with the commercial, it seemed unnecessary. And so we just took that out. Is that right, Jillian?
Absolutely. And I think we had that discussion beyond just you and I, we've talked about it, and essentially as well too, if we're publishing a rate and then we're saying, but take off 5% if you're local, then they're like, can you just tell me what the rate is, right? We're telling them to go calculate what their rate is. And the other piece of it is behind the scenes on ActiveNet, building that out is a whole nother suite of requirements, and requirements not just in developing it in the software, but also on the user to remember to click this button and that one and every single piece of that to make it to where we want it to be. So some simplicity will be helpful with the software.
I do agree. I'm not a fan of the discount model. We've had a lot of conversations around that. However, I was really impressed with the document that you provided, which was the rate sheets from the Pitt Meadows facility, where they did have one rate for other nonprofits and one rate for local community nonprofits. And I thought that was a really good way of recognizing their local community who is paying for and funding this facility. So.
Yeah.
I feel like we could have 5 categories, just like that one from Port Moody. It's there's local, community group, regular community group. Private could just be maybe anyone off island or not, because everyone's going to claim to have a great uncle that died here. So maybe private is just private, and then commercial is the one that maybe we could also break up into local. And because if Riley Cidery wants to do something versus the TV and film industry, those are very different levels of commercial. And the reason why we had that discussion in our group was when Sienna was with us and you had to miss that meeting. We thought if there was just rate structures that were very clear, then it's great for optics, because our community is going to love seeing that if you're a local community group, you have a different price than if you're an off-island community group. And similarly, our business, our businesses on Bowen are going to be very grateful to not be lumped under the same as the film industry or any other major industry that would come in for like a weekend retreat on Bowen. So I'm in favor of local categories, not discounts. So Sienna and Lee explained to us why you can't apply a discount because 95% of them would be discounted and
Yeah.
with too much administrative work.
Yeah.
But I think we need to have more categories for our community to feel seen and responded to. I think it's critical, actually.
If we make that distinction in all three of these categories, with
Or at least-
potentially, an on-island and an off-island wedding, for instance, then that we could delineate that one in terms of having a set fee for all the on-islands, whether it's community, private, or commercial, and then off-island.
It would look like Port Moody, but with one more line.
Yeah.
Instead of being 4, there'd be 6.
So do they have to be a resident to receive that rate? And their parent be a resident? Is it like, how do we define it? How do we get that proof? How do we implement that intention?
And can I just say, I don't know who these off-island users are. Like, can someone give me an example of an off-island, not-for-profit community group renting the space?
So there are like, I do know that some companies, for example, do retreats or all staff events on Bowen for the day or the weekend type thing. So that could be one
I see.
type of use.
I
of it.
see. Right. So
Um,
these are people who are using it as a destination, like a hotel where they're coming and doing an event here.
Yeah. So like, obviously it's not accommodation, but they'll be using it like a conference type center or, and then off-island weddings is an easy one to envision. But the question of how do you confirm if you're off-island or on-island is, especially for personal events, that becomes incredibly difficult to manage.
There's gonna be somebody that's going to take the booking and they can say yes or no.
Yeah.
So, it's.
Yeah.
My uncle lived here for 5 minutes but he loved it.
You got a kid who went to school here, graduated here, is bringing their theater group or band or
Yeah.
something back. That's gonna be something we're wanting.
It's a judgment call and there's been all that gray in the middle. It's just gonna be somebody's judgment.
That's what we're trying to eliminate though, I
Yeah.
think.
But I don't know that we can.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
there's just always gonna be shades of gray.
Yeah, and it can be tweaked, right? We're not gonna get it perfect. It's going to change.
Yeah.
Like pretty soon, I imagine.
Reminds me a little bit of though, like, call, hey dad, can I do this? No. Hey mom, can I do this? Yeah.
Well, I think what it gets down to is what the philosophy of the place is. Because you're looking at what potential revenue generation is, right? And I know this from other facilities. It's, you go after business, right? And if you're going after hotel business, off-island business, like the Pinnacle Hotel, where it's a business model, then you develop that within your fee structure and your philosophies about how you work, because you're looking at it. The primary goal is revenue generation. But I've always assumed this is a community center, a performing arts center, and a community center that's about Bowen Island. So I think that was a conversation that Jillian and I had, which was how to tilt it towards it being about the community and away from revenue generation. Because what I heard is that the municipality isn't interested in running a business. So my question is this a business? Is this about a space business that's being run, or is it a community amenity? Right? And I think that's where the wrestling comes in. So you can't have your cake and eat it both. You either build your structures and your policies to make it a community amenity, which has the possibility of generating revenue, but it isn't what the primary goal is. So I think that's where it gets tricky to figure out how to do this.
Thanks again. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how long we want to spend on this discussion, but I mean, this is what we've gone round and round in the management model subcommittee. And that's why we came to you guys last meeting with sort of 2 proposals, one that sort of prioritized the generation of revenue, and the other was to prioritize community objectives. And what we came away with was an understanding that community objectives really needed to be met. But I don't see why we can't tilt it towards community objectives, Kim, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And in tilting it, we have 5 to 6 rate categories. So why not make more money if a very expensive 1 week conference comes in from, why not have a pay structure in place that if they do want to come in and use our space from Off Island for a week, that we can actually generate enough revenue for almost the whole month in that week. And yet do exactly what our community needs to see, which is that it's tilted in their favor. If they use it, they get first priority to book it, first of all. And secondly, they get a better price. And our community is going to enjoy seeing that. Some people are going to still think it's too expensive, but at least they will see that they're not paying a flat rate the same as anybody else. So
And you're being fiscally responsible with this building. In other words, if you can take a big rental, community will be like, Ray, obviously you are running a business of some sort. And covering your costs. But it's not a priority.
We got a thumbs up from Kim.
Okay, so let's add we'll add 2 user groups, local community group and local commercial, and then private stays the same. That's what I heard.
what I heard.
5. Okay. Okay,
So I thought it was categories for all three.
except.
I think they're gonna be on one of both.
Okay. Quite sure. They'll have this.
I think you need private access. There's so many other wedding venues on this island as well too, right? You start discounting here, you're gonna be shooting other groups in the foot. I think you need private access.
I think maybe what I'm hearing Judy say is that there's these 3 groups. These 3 groups are either on island or off island. So there's a category right above that says on island, community group, private, commercial, and then off island. Community, private, commercial. Or not, is that, Judy, is that what you meant?
That's what I was.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of it from the lens of how we implement it in software as well, and we would have to create it as different groups. But we could communicate it and display it as like what you're saying.
Excuse me, can I ask Fraser, I know you're chair, so you haven't been speaking that much, but can you say aloud what you just said about undercutting local other venues? Thank
So
you.
say let's pick a wedding concept for an idea and somebody, got the Huntsville Bay Community Association having a wedding booking and then, oh, wow, we can actually get it cheaper at the community center and it's subsidized by the taxpayers. That's not gonna go over
Oh,
too well, right?
so we need to keep our rates above, like.
No, I'm not saying keep it above. What I'm saying is I wouldn't, for a private, personally, offer a discount for locals.
But Fraser, you've got into what the rates are, and I think Jillian and I have got, so that's gonna come up later.
Yeah.
About what the rates are and about undercutting and what they're set at. I think
Yeah,
this
we're talking
policy,
rate categories here
Yeah,
though too,
I
right?
think-
So we're
yeah,
creating
this-
an extra category otherwise.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, though?
Yeah, actually,
It's tricky.
that's interesting.
Again, the community groups, like a non-for-profit society thing is totally different. Maybe even we just do 4 groups, two for community, local and non-local, and then we leave private and commercial as this. And the commercial entities on the island aren't being subsidized. And subsidized might be the wrong word, but that's ultimately what it is.
well, it may not be, like you're getting into what the rates are and about how we determine the rates and
It's
what the cost of the
yeah.
facility is. So,
That's perception.
yeah, it's perception, but that has more to do with the numbers than the policy. Right? So you're right, when you're setting your rates, and we're gonna get into that, and I've got a document I can show where I did put a little bit of the research in about where we fit into the community. So it's a very valid point, Fraser, but I don't think it's reflected in this policy. That's reflected in what the actual costs are, because that's
Okay.
when someone's looking at whether this venue is cheaper than that venue.
So are you suggesting that we table this for just a few minutes? We go
Yeah.
over rates and then come back to this idea, because maybe the rate stuff is going to influence what our suggestion or our recommendation is for this first component.
It might, yeah.
Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Not to be procrastinating or anything, but. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Hillary.
I think that was it for this first document, rental process and rate categories.
Was there a sheet with the zeros on it that was under this
Yeah,
category?
the rates are all zeros. Well, that's the next one.
Good rates.
Yeah. Oh, and just,
No, not that one, so.
yeah.
Is that one with the?
This one.
Yeah. And just Jillian, I do have ready to share it was a Word document that has a bit of analysis, both of what venues are on. It's being able to compare apples to apples, venues on Bowen Island and venues that are in the region about what the rates are. So when you're ready, I can share that either before or after, when I've just stopped that waiting.
Okay.
Here, I can put it here.
So the next documents in the agenda package, the ones with the zero rates on it. This one, the point of this one is not to define the rates, is to show you, to talk about the types of rentals more so. So, and explain what it means a little bit. And there was a visual that went with it on page 15 of the agenda. Because we've talked about the different types of rentals that would take place in the different rooms. And most of the rooms, it's pretty straightforward. It's a room rental, right? It's the theater
Just a second.
that the.
What's up? I have to go have it on in a minute.
Kim, we can hear you.
Don't say anything incriminating.
Sorry, I just had to turn the video off for a second.
So within the theater, recognizing that there's differences in requirements from a performance rental, rehearsal rental, and a non-performance rental. So within this, both the performance and the rental and the rehearsal rental, that's triggering all the technical equipment implementation. So, all the sound, lighting, seating, clear-comm equipment, that's the communications between the technicians and the production staff with audience. If there's no audience there, then it's a rehearsal rental. And a non-performance rental would be, there's a few examples there of classes, workshops, fitness. So they're not using the sophisticated lighting system. They're not using that AV. They're using the more walk into the room, press a button, turn on the lights, and Bluetooth to the speaker system. So it doesn't require any special technical ability and use of equipment. So there would be quite different rates on those.
So with Tony Productions, we have the performance, obviously, and we have tech and dress where we need everything up and running. But all the other rehearsals, it would be wonderful to be able to afford to use this space without, to have a non-performance rate. We're not using all the technical stuff, just to be able to have the stage and know where the exits are and, whether or not we've got enough time to get from
Yeah, I
one
think-
side to the other.
I think that would fall into the performance, non-performance. Yeah.
Okay.
So non-tech rent.
Non-tech rental, yeah. And then we've had big discussions about, what if Tony, for example, is doing a production over 2 consecutive weekends. They'd really love to leave all their stuff in place. So we're thinking, okay, well, how can we do that? So that's what a stage hold is that your equipment or your set rather is on that stage and left there for the week. If you're able to pack up all of that and put it into one of the backstage rooms, then that's what the backstage rental would be. And that's something that, it's not something that we would broadly communicate as an option out there. It's just knowing that, we're trying to build in that ability to leave sets on site. So, the theater partial rental is if somebody is able to use that theater space with the stage hold happening. So there would be no opportunity to rent theater partial if there's no stage hold in effect.
Mm.
Oh, unless it's, well, I mean, they use, Collins Hall and, you know, the other church in terms of just having the set and the blacks up. But, everything else is taken out, and all the props and all the costumes and all the rest of it. So if the theater partial, the seats are back and they've got a big space, then they want to, you know, put a bunch of tables and chairs in or whatever.
That is a theater partial, and what she's
Yeah.
saying is you can't do theater partial if there's no stage hold. You don't just get a cheaper price and say, oh, well, we're only gonna use from this line back, even though there's nothing on the stage. They just don't, they want people to,
Okay, but Tony would be wanting to have, paying for the stage hold,
Mhm.
but we wouldn't, you could rent out the.
That's,
theater.
that's what
That's
theater
what we're
partial
saying.
is for, yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
So you can do it unless there's something,
Yeah.
stage hold is there.
Yeah, we
unless
wouldn't
There's a reason.
present it as an option. Yeah.
I like the idea, so long as there's something in a rental policy, the rental policy document whereby a theater partial promises that they will not touch anything on the stage hold component.
I think that's a really big challenge with it all, with this whole.
I mean, the traveler, oh, sorry.
I just wanted to ask a little bit about the rationale for the minimum 4 hours for the non-performance rentals and maybe even the rehearsal rental. Like, obviously, if you've got a technician and you're doing a full sound and lighting rehearsal, you would probably need a minimum, but if you didn't need that extra equipment, I would be concerned perhaps that we were turning away rentals that didn't want to pay for 4 hours.
I can speak to that a bit. The reason, you're right, you will be able to do it because you'll see in the rental document that you can rent it for less than 4 hours. But the reason it's there is so that you don't fill it up with 1 hour rentals so that you actually can't have somebody book it for 4 hours. Because you have someone booked it for an hour and if you're going to be using the more expensive or the more revenue generating slots, you want the space to be able to be booked in 4 hour slots. Administratively, we find that if we rent our space out by the hour, it becomes very, very difficult to put any other things in because people are only wanting it for an hour. And so you have these hotspots like after school, right? They want it for 4 to 5. So that means you have a harder time renting it out. So the 4 hour minimum is meant to encourage a certain kind of activity. It doesn't mean you can't rent it for an hour, but that becomes a concession rather than the rule.
So would that be addressed perhaps by saying the minimum lead time to book a 1 hour rental in a room that size is like 30 days, like you could only book 30 days out or something?
We do sort of have that as 3 months right now for 2 hour minimums.
So you couldn't book it out a year in advance for 2 hours. Yeah. But you could in 3 months.
so in other words, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So in other words, maybe within once you hit 3 month mark, you can do 2 hour minimums, but maybe within 1 month, it should go down again, like to start infilling. And really, I also realized maybe we should be reconsidering that for 7 days a week. Like, I think that for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, maybe those 4 hour, but for Monday and Tuesday, should we really actually be, I never thought about this in our discussions, but when Kristen was talking, I'm like, yeah, it's true, Monday and Tuesday, should we really be holding out a 4 hour block booking requirement? I don't know. Kim, do you have a thought on that?
Usually those are your tech days as well, right?
Oh, that's
so
true.
I just, it comes from experience. Because the 1 hour rentals are usually for classes. They're rarely for events. But anyone who has, it's about setting things up and getting things ready for performance or for events. And that takes time. And so people like to save money by trying to book it by the hour, but it becomes administratively really, really challenging. And invariably people go over their time because with one person coming in for 1 hour and then another person coming in for another hour, it takes 15 minutes turnover between the two user groups. And that's where all the friction happens in a space. is the shift from one group to another. So if you rent a space out by the hour, you exponentially increase your friction time and need management time for every hour turnover that's going on. So the 4-hour block is to reduce that kind of friction and encourage activities that are meant to, take more time, that are more event oriented. And I don't mean just performance. I mean, if someone's getting ready for a wedding, if someone's getting ready for a conference, it takes setup time, right? Setup and strike time. So we just found it much easier to manage in 4-hour blocks.
Sorry, we are looking at time here and we are really, really beyond. I want to give Judy a quick go and then I want to stop for just 1 second and have a chat.
So I'm
Judy?
thinking that this chart could have whatever the rental is per hour and leave off the minimum and the 6+ hours because that's in the process,
Right.
right? So we're starting off with a minimum 4-hour block and then it could be additional 1 hours after that 1 hour additions. So, and this different for the smaller rooms, but I think for this chart, it would be good to figure out what our hourly rate is, and then that the other one takes care of the
Yeah, I think you're right.
other.
And this is so this is a draft of what would be a public facing rate sheet. So,
I did wanted, the one thing about pushing the equipment back so that you can rent out the space. Can the curtains cover?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
there's
so-
the front traveler should be able to close that off. I mean, toddlers running around, so we still gonna have to watch it,
Sure.
but there will be a facilitator. It would have to be, it would have to be part of their rental agreement that nobody goes backstage, nobody goes behind her.
And that whatever is stored can at least be far enough back that the curtain can cover it.
Yeah, I mean,
I know you don't
yeah,
want to.
it would have to be, yeah.
Set.
Okay.
just for safety's sake. Well, and I think along with, the renter of that partial theater, understanding they can't go behind the curtain, they can't touch anything, there's gonna have to be an understanding, whoever's doing that stage hold rental, that we're not policing that 24/7, right? So technically, somebody could go behind the curtain and we can't be held responsible for that.
Okay, we're about 20 minutes behind and we still have a lot to go through. So right now it's rate sheets and user groups. We still gotta do tracking sheet review, should be fast. Rental policy is gonna take some time. We still have,
We're at rental process and rate category.
well, is this not the rate sheet section right here right
Yeah,
now?
we're done with that because we're gonna come back to talking about rates a little bit
Okay.
later.
So we're,
We do have a possible option to add a meeting next week if people have available as well too. As much as everybody would love to do it. I'm just thinking we've got a lot to go through with 2 weeks here. And I'm thinking we need to table a couple of these little things. Come back next week for another meeting, a working meeting, maybe not, like what we did a couple of weeks back.
But we'll need to make records.
But we can, oh no, we would have to make them, so that have to be no.
The tracking sheet review, they marked it, so.
Okay.
We just came 5 minutes.
Well, let's carry on then, and we'll hold off on the recommendations for now. We'll see how far the rest of us go and we can call it as if we need to do another meeting. Before we make our recommendations or where we make our recommendations. Does that sound good? Liam? I'm just thinking we've got a lot to go, a lot still to cover here. Kim, that sound okay?
So still doing this one?
Are we done here?
We're done there.
We're done here.
Okay, and then what, did Kim have something to show?
Kim?
I do, this is just some research.
That's later. Okay.
Is that for later? Thank you. I'll leave
so.
it for Jillian to ask for when she wants it.
Okay, so are we on to rental policy, Lee?
Okay, rental policy. So actually, Councillor Getty and I worked a lot on this together, so. Councillor Getty, but we can go over. Just read it through, I guess. Bowen Island, BICC has several rental spaces, including meeting rooms. Blah, blah, blah. It's a priority for Bowen Island to support year-round vibrant community hub. BIM will contract all room rental in the BICC to the Hearts on Bowen. As a stakeholder and advisor to BIM, bookings of rental spaces may prioritize local programming, but this policy is not intended to discourage anyone from hosting events in the facility. So the purpose is to establish guidelines and procedures, reservation process, we sort of talked about already for quite a long time, subject to terms and conditions of the signed contract. The people who have priority, that'll all be put in after. So rates and fees, we're still discussing that later on. I will change the deposits. And just the fact that rental fees for VICC facilities and other applicable charges are established annually by bylaw and are mandatory. Current rates for fees will be, charges can be provided. Okay. Referencing that bylaw, I believe that's correct. Liam. Cancellation policy. This is still in flux after changes on previous conversations, so I will go through this and change that, but the minimum, there's a minimum, failure to comply, result in full payment for forfeiture of any payments received. So if you put down a deposit and you don't show up, you don't get your deposit back. Events canceled, will receive full refund in a certain amount of days, minus any administrative fee. I think we put 15% as a holder here, and I think that was somewhat reasonable. I think we thought. We'll have to relook at that. In the event of emergency or for health and safety reasons, reasonable requests for cancellation and refund by the renter may be considered. So that's speaking to what you were. In the event of emergency or for health and safety reasons, we reserve the right to cancel a rental when necessary without adequate notice to the applicant or the rental group, and a full refund will be issued. So that's if something, building floods or something. Use of space, I don't think a ton of this has changed from the first reading. It's just shared and publicly funded community asset. You must reflect that. You must comply with laws. So following the Human Rights Code. Renters must, so another one that came from my meeting with the Accessibility Committee last week, is that they would like to see that renters must strive to meet all accessibility standards to provide equitable access to all events in the BICC. So it would be, they could refer to our accessibility policy, and it would be with an aim to providing accessible, regardless who is renting, to provide accessible events. Event bookings of religious or political nature, I don't think this has changed, just cannot recruit. Flyers and posters would be confined to the rental space, and they couldn't be distributed or posted otherwise. Weapons, I don't think this changed. Open flames, this didn't change. So the venue rental bookings can only be made by an adult, 19 plus years of age. All child and youth events require adult supervision. I did ask the Municipal Insurance Association of BC, and they said because a person who is a youth cannot enter into a contract, that they would have to have somebody. But youth groups led and organized by youth are eligible to book spaces without supervision and sponsorship, subject to the community senior management team. I feel like there wasn't a good feeling about that term. And also I'm not sure that this is fully true. It depends on insurance. I do have an email in with them, and yeah, they suggest that there does need to be
One says
supervision.
that they need supervision, the next one says.
Yeah, but I think this is left over from research. I only just got the reply today from that. So I don't think we can do the unsupervised for youth groups. I'm asking for more, and I'm also going to a seminar next week, or going to a webinar next week where these answers or questions should be answered. No rentals to groups identified as criminal organizations. That hasn't changed. Equipments and services, I don't think any of this has really changed too much. All equipment provided by the BIC is property of BICC, and any damage caused during the rental period is a responsibility of the renter. Damage to equipment will result in the forfeit of the damage deposit and could incur other costs if the damage is extensive. I added that just because there's some very expensive equipment in many of the rooms. So this here, the liability, so we do have for large, the 2 million indemnifying them required for large special events, weddings, receptions, all parties, trade shows, high risk events. Small events and things like that is something I think we'd have to discuss, just because they say the insurance people said that it's sort of up to local government based on their risk tolerance and comfort level. So essentially we could say, parties under 10 who are having a meeting may not need to provide their own insurance, but anything over than that, or if we're not comfortable that municipality, that we could just require everybody to have a small amount of insurance. They didn't have any specific rules other than to say sort of up to us.
Do you want to hold questions to the end?
I think we should have them.
Yeah, I think as we go through this.
Did MIABC weigh in on a 2 million liability? You do have a filming policy, like for like if the film crew comes to Bowen and wants to film on Bowen, on Bowen, we require 5 million liability.
Okay.
For much of our construction contract. We require 5.
So I based the 2 million on just a lot of my research. I think City of Vancouver does it that way. West Vancouver, I think, does it that way in like Cambridge and places like that. I didn't ask that question of the NIAPC. Could. I don't know. I could ask that.
Jamie, we do 2 million right now, don't we? Our stuff.
Is it 2? I can check, but I can't have a look.
Mimi?
I have a question, maybe John, you can speak to this about the floor. Because some places, I'm looking at Centennial Lodge in New West, they have a policy of not only no candles, et cetera, but no confetti, rice, dance wax, glitter, and or sparkles allowed. Because they have the floors.
No glitter. Okay, no glitter, so I just want to know.
Confetti.
Well, what were the others? That would be.
Rice.
Let's see.
Where was that?
Confetti, rice, dance wax, glitter, and or sparkles.
Dance wax.
So it's a resin that they use on Valley Point shoes, which
Makes you non-slip.
it makes it non-slip, but it's an interesting problem.
Also, another clarification is no outdoor cooking allowed, including barbecues, grills, smokers, and propane. In case people are having parties outside, it might be worth.
So we actually said that you can.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
want parties.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect, okay.
But, so do you think that's wax is reasonable to add in this? We had confetti and glitter, but how about rice, that's wax?
I wouldn't add the resin. It comes off, the next contemporary dance artist rolls on the floor and takes it with them. I mean, honestly, it's kind of a drag, but it doesn't,
do it too.
yeah,
They're rolling.
it won't ruin the floor.
Okay.
But it is unfortunate for the next dance group to come on. That's pretty much the worst thing that resin is it makes it sticky for the next group who's trying to slide or turn. But it doesn't, I wouldn't include the dance. Says the dancer. I have 2 points, so I don't care. Get those silly
No, but
people.
if you were to come after the ballet.
Yeah, then I don't like resin at all. Yeah, Hilda would.
And we are at 5 million liability we did that for Collins Hall recently. 5 million.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's more the standard.
Sure.
I have a question about janitorial supplies. So if they're meant to keep or keep the, or clean the facility after use, are they gonna have access to big?
Yeah, we
rooms
say,
and-
we do say in here that we'll provide cleaning supplies for certain things, I believe. Yeah, we're not asking people to, clean the windows.
Yeah, but if it's a big event and there's
Yeah,
a lot that needs to be cleaned.
I think, I'm pretty sure that's in here. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit cross-eyed with all these.
Sure. And the
Yes.
bathrooms, if it's a big event, are they responsible to clean the bathrooms?
No.
So, okay, I'm just saying, you
No,
know,
that's
if
a
you have a
great
big
question.
wedding and the
Yeah.
bathroom's destroyed, who's cleaning the bathroom?
That's why they get a
Custodial,
surcharge.
but that's, yeah. And it would be, we'll go over the rates up later.
Okay.
So.
As long as you're aware of that,
Yeah.
that you'll need to pay a cleaner extra time or bring a cleaner in after an event to
Yeah.
clean, especially the washrooms and the kitchen probably.
Mhm.
Backing up in this policy a little bit, speaking to the cancellation policy clause. I think it's hard to have a one size fits all cancellation policy, one that would be appropriate for the theater versus one that would be appropriate for the smaller room. So I wonder, maybe we should pull that piece out and just say cancellation policies, as per the schedule attached, and then have that in a separate schedule where we defined the, the different policies for the different types of rooms.
Mhm. It's probably one for the theater and one for everything else.
Yeah. Probably.
That was in the other document, not this one.
A little bit, yeah.
There was number 3 though here, cancellation, she's saying it's too, not everything can be subsumed under it.
So the board compliant. Okay.
Sorry, moving on if that's okay. So the other one that I did add is the use of recorded or live music requires licensing by Tandem or SOCAN. The only thing I'm unclear on is if we have to collect that fee and submit it, or if they have to apply to SOCAN or in Tandem themselves. Some places do one way, some places do the other, and I'm trying to emailed in Tandem a couple of times, and every time I phone, I have bad timing, I guess.
It's usually the facility that pays that.
But
Yeah,
then
but
it's
it's a
incorporated
fee,
into
though.
a fee. So like,
Yeah.
Huron, for example, they have their like SOCAN license or whatever,
Yeah.
but if you're using that, then you're paying them and they've got a rate in part of your rental
Right.
agreement with them about that.
Okay.
Yeah,
so-
and there's also an exemption for education purposes and things like that, so
Yeah.
we don't pay very much at all.
Right,
Thanks, Ken.
thank you. I will continue to try to get on.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm sure it's my fault, not theirs. The liquor stuff, I don't think changed. Yeah, I just need to confirm the time. So the time would depend on like when you can go beyond it. As far as I can see, the permits let you go up to 2 AM, but whether or not we want to go that late, I think is up to us.
And they have to apply for noise exemption bylaw. Is it written in there?
Yep, so that's actually the next one here. Thank you. Events that include amplified music or public address are subject to Rhode Island Municipal Noise Control Bylaw. It's the responsibility of the renter to meet all requirements of the bylaw and any exemptions required. I did speak with our bylaw about that, and he said that was fairly regular. He also suggested that we may be able to do something like the Legion does, where they have a good neighbor agreement, and it's a little bit easier, but that would be something we would have to decide on operationally, I guess.
And you have to determine the area.
He would figure that out, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't really want to get into that where somebody on the bit is responsible for going around to the neighborhood. Right? Then you can't necessarily rely on the renters. So, if it's a matter of if the amplified music, if it's going to be outdoors, then it has to end by 9, I think. Is it 10?
I think it's
9 or
10.
It's
And everyone has to be inside. So if the party's on the patio,
Yeah.
they all have to be inside at a certain time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
the outdoor amplification of the music, amplified music.
and indoor
I
too.
mean, we could end up with a lot of complaints because we're very close to the apartment building, so then it might, that could easily change, but. We don't want to start off setting it up that we're going to. Like for exemptions or, a good neighbor policy,
Mhm.
we want to, but.
Maybe that's let's see how the first year goes
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for now, I think we should make it, put it on the renter to
Yeah.
take care of. I think it's.
Especially since I don't think this wouldn't apply to productions in the theater. No, it's just a party that's spilling out with the doors open out to the courtyard.
I believe there are for internal, like,
But our acoustical treatments are such that it.
yeah, we should be okay, but there are measurements, like at a certain distance, it can't be this decibel outside if you're inside, right? But that's all in the bylaw. I think we should be fine for the most part.
It's gonna be the patio and the open doors.
Yeah.
It won't, it's unlikely to be the theater with the door closed.
I'm thinking more like weddings.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll need a permit for sure. I'm at, yeah.
Do we have a capacity limit yet?
No. We won't until we get before occupancy, I believe. And then I don't think anything else has changed, smoking and vaping, permitted. Emergency access is accessible. Dispute resolution. I think that's it. Is there anything else I'm saying?
You have the Jeff's highlighted, did you want to talk about?
I just like that word.
Okay.
Do we want to say it, Jack? I don't know. I think it's
It feels like an
perfectly
emergency seat in a plane.
fine. Yeah, I do like that.
But remove.
I think it's
I'm
fun.
just curious with the dispute resolution, sorry, this is the first time I'm doing this. It doesn't look to me like the dispute resolutions that I'm used to seeing, because this is more about like how BIM reserves the right to basically refuse access or those types of things. Like I typically for me, I'm used to seeing dispute resolutions, but if there is a dispute from from a party that has rented the facility, it'll be managed in this way, so.
Right.
I would imagine, I'm not fully familiar with dispute resolutions for rental agreements, but I would imagine there'd be an attempt to negotiate a resolution between the parties and failing that. It would go to court or council.
Does it need a different title? Maybe it's.
Yeah, I don't think it is, because it doesn't read as a dispute resolution. It's more about like BIM reserves the right to.
To cancel an agreement.
Yeah, so I don't know that a dispute resolution is really would be in a rental policy.
Mhm. So I think you're right. I don't think it is a dispute resolution as much as it is saying, like, if you lie to us, like you say you're coming to play chess and you end up playing
Strip poker.
strip poker. We need to.
Why didn't he tell us to say?
That just came off the top of your head.
Everything closed, yeah?
Why was not?
Okay, so number 3 is cancellation policy, so maybe we tweak this and get it into.
Yeah, I
move
think
it
so.
up.
Yeah.
There, take the title out.
Yeah, I think so. And just coming back to the cancellation policy quickly, there is cancellation policy language in the rental rates document.
Yeah, that will be parted over.
Yeah, we'll make sure they mirror each.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Great. Yeah, just to keep you guessing.
let's keep everyone.
Oh, no, that's it.
Okay,
All right.
that's a good work.
So Kara, we're ready to vote on that one with the trust as amended? Do you feel like you could apply what they've told you with accuracy?
Yeah, enough for council to start hacking.
Yeah.
What is it?
Hacking, mucking, lots of different.
These remaining items like,
Yeah, what's, the biggest thing is that the rental, like portions of the rental process are gonna go into this, and I don't feel
We're
like
not
we've
there yet.
set with the rental process yet.
Right.
policy review and updates, that's simple, like it will be reviewed periodically, and
Periodically,
updated as needed, references or.
If I, it's just, I built a structure and I tried to fill things out, we don't have to do
Right.
these.
Accessibility.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, perfect, because 13 and 14 could be dropped.
So are we ready to recommend as amended?
No, because we have to.
Yeah.
We're doing it
Okay.
like-
Hold off.
We're close though.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Is it accessibility next?
Yeah, we can
Ooh. The local one, man.
Yeah,
we don't have time though, so.
theater people.
So accessibility policy, I had a meeting, sorry, are we good to move on?
Yes.
I had a meeting with the accessibility action, sorry, I'm blanking on the
Advice.
advisory committee, thank you. And they gave me some really excellent feedback on the one that I presented to them, and this is a whole new rework of essentially of that. I haven't sent it to them for another look at it, but here it is. The Bowen Island Community Center is dedicated to ensuring that our services, facilities, and programs are accessible to all members of the community, regardless of their abilities. This accessibility policy articulates our commitment to offer fair and equitable access to all individuals and to cultivate an atmosphere of inclusivity for all. To ensure equitable access to the Bowen Island community, we seek to eliminate all barriers, visible or invisible, physical, financial, stigmatic, attitudinal, or technological that may impede someone from engaging in or facilitating community activities. We are committed to upholding our responsibility to adhere to all relevant legislation and regulations concerning accessibility. This includes, but is not limited to, compliance with the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Accessible British Columbia Act. We strive for excellence in accessibility, guided by legislation and established guidelines and best practices. Accessible environment services, we are committed to providing accessible facilities and services to all members of the community. This includes, but is not limited to, a built environment, accessible parking spaces close to the entrance, ramps for individuals using wheelchairs or mobility aids, accessible washrooms with appropriate fixtures and grab bars. B, technology, hearing assistance technology, large print and braille signage for individuals with visual impairments, accessible website meeting WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guideline Standards.
I think we need to spell that out.
Yes, I saw it, thank you. Sound dampening fixtures and furniture.
Can I ask what hearing assistance technology is?
So in the theater, we have, it's an FM hearing assistance. So people who need hearing assistance, they get these headsets, and there's this FM broadcaster, and it receives it, so that it gets anything that is through the PA system,
Oh,
specifically straight to there.
so in emergency, they would also, you know, you gotta get out of the building, they would hear that.
They would hear the PA system. Yeah, the PA gets the full, actually, all the theater systems get interrupted by a fire, if fire goes on.
If there's an emergency and you have to get out of the building, is there like
Yeah.
lights
We have
flashing?
strobes and sound, yeah. Thank you. Practices, or C, practices, training and guidance, receiving feedback and advocacy, striving to meet the needs of the whole community. Training and awareness, we are committed to providing ongoing training and awareness programs for our staff and volunteers to ensure they are knowledgeable about accessibility issues and how to support individuals with disabilities. This includes training and providing inclusive customer service and recognizing and accommodating different types of visible and invisible disabilities in consultation with community members. They were very generous in saying that they would be they will definitely be able to help with that. Ongoing feedback and advocacy. We welcome feedback from members of the community on how we can improve accessibility at the Bowen Island Community Center. If you have any concerns or comments regarding accessibility, please contact us when we have a contact email and phone number. And then this policy may be updated or revised at the discretion of the Bowen Island municipality to ensure that it remains current and effective in meeting the needs of our community.
Judy had a hand up.
I've got a couple of very small typos.
Oh, thank you.
You know, grammar thing.
Thank you.
Doesn't change the content.
There's another document, and I can't remember where, but we do reference the EDI policies of the hearth and
That's the value.
core values, yeah.
And it probably should be referenced. in-
Yeah, I think this is an appropriate place to.
Let's just add that extra thing at the bottom where it's cheese.
Is it the EDI policy?
Yeah.
And the provincial mandate to have ongoing feedback regarding accessibility. We have 5 different avenues for providing that. One, the email address is the AAC@BIMBC. Email also goes to the committee, which includes me, Drew, and Alex. So this contact, like, do you want a specific staff member who's gonna like be facility oriented, or do you want to just use the AAC@BIMBC for that? Did we talk about that?
We
already?
did, we talked about it would be good to have it be very direct, but also be CC'd.
Oh, okay.
Remember?
Okay. Sorry, I forgot how we managed on.
No, that's okay. I sort of did too. I'm not sure what this contact number or email, if it's a specific one that we set up. That's been BC one, or if it's. I'm not sure, or if it is somebody from.
I think it should go to Ben. The commission of the committee is an advisory to Ben.
Mhm.
But it has me and a planner on it and Alex. But you just think the inbox, BIMBC? Okay.
Anything else?
Good work.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Let's do some voting.
I think we can actually.
Can we please?
Yes.
I'll have to add references and things like that, but I do want to point out that this came out from like a very excellent discussion with the AAC, and I hugely in debt to that, so. Thanks for me.
So, and when you include as amended in the recommendation, that's, you're assuming that you're gonna be doing some amending.
Right. Let's do it.
Anybody move that we recommend the as amended draft accessibility policy for council approval?
Well, to be included in the
Yeah.
package of policies, yeah.
Judy?
Sure.
Second. Thank you.
Any more discussion?
Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor?
You got one.
Kim, was that your hand up wanting to talk or hand up for the vote?
Oh.
Okay, good. Anybody opposed? Awesome, thank you.
That feels good, right?
It's all like.
Okay, before we move on to new business and the job description, any other things out of that?
No, we got a privacy policies too.
Yeah. Oh, of course, privacy policy, 5.6. Sorry, I wrote that in. Yeah.
And it is, so we have a privacy policy for the organization, that is that?
I couldn't.
Didn't find
I
it.
can only see the website one. For the website. Okay. The BICC is committed to protecting your privacy and ensuring the security of your personal information. Any information collected will only be used to administer programs, informing you of our services and benefits, and for statistical purposes. This policy outlines our practices to ensure compliance with the provisions of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act and/or the Personal Information Protection. Collection of personal information. We collect personal information for the following purposes: provide services such as facility rentals and event registration, to communicate with individuals about our services, programs, events, and other relevant information, to maintain accurate records of facility usage, transactions, and interactions with the BICC, and to comply with legal and regulatory requirements. Except where permitted or required by law, we collect personal information only with the consent of the individual. Use and disclosure. We use and disclose personal information for the purposes for which it was collected, or for other purposes with the consent of the individual, or as permitted or required by law. It's kind of a repeat. It's realized. We may disclose personal information to third-party services who assist in providing our services, such as IT, payment processors, and marketing partners. Do we have marketing partners? Lots.
We do.
What
But it may be
is that?
I guess instructors be under our
Instructors,
umbrella.
yeah.
Hmm.
These service providers shall be contractually obligated to protect the confidentiality and security of personal information and to use it only for the purposes specified by the BICC. We may also disclose personal information when required by law, such as in response to a court order or subpoena. By providing personal information to the BICC, individuals consent to the collection, use, and disclosure of their personal information as described in this privacy policy. Individuals may withdraw their consent at any time, subject to legal or contractual restrictions and reasonable notice. However, withdrawal of consent may prevent us from providing certain services or may affect the functionality of our website or other systems. Security.
Someone else
This
could
one's
read
so
for a while.
long.
too.
Yeah.
We shall take reasonable precautions to protect personal information from loss, theft, and unauthorized access, disclosure, copying, use, or modification. These precautions include physical, technical, and administrative security measures. Despite our efforts, no method of transmission over the internet or electronic storage is 100% secure. Therefore, while we strive to use commercially acceptable means to protect personal information, we cannot guarantee its absolute security. Upon request, we may provide individuals with access to their personal information subject to legal or contractual restrictions. Individuals may also request corrections to their personal information to ensure its accuracy and completeness. We retain personal information only for as long as necessary to fulfill the purposes for which it was collected or as required by law.
Sorry, can I still read? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So this is what sounds very similar, to the
Okay.
draft policy that our department has. Is that similar? Doesn't look like it's been adopted or anything. Similar information.
Similar.
Not similar enough, okay.
This is mostly built from other privacy policies, and then I spoke with our Sky, our IT people, and I spoke with Hope before she left, I think, about this too. And then it was. We may update this policy from time to time. Any changes will be posted in the revised policy. Will provide all personnel information collected after the effective date. If you want information, contact information. Thank you, Lee. You're welcome. Judy?
I recommend that the community center joint management follow the draft privacy and personal information collection and use policy as presented and amended if applicable at its June 11th CCJMC meeting be included in the package of policies for the facility to provide to council for approval. Second.
Thank you. Any questions about it?
All in favor? Thank you kindly, everybody.
Yay, policies.
Come on, Lee. Woo. Thanks for talking. Do you need a glass of water?
Yeah.
Really?
Okay. On to new business, other business job description.
Yeah. I'm gonna be really quick because we don't have time, but simply put, few things have happened and come to my attention. Jamie and I have been working away at this job description. There was an unfortunate miscommunication and we didn't get it into the agenda, but there wouldn't have been room to get it into the agenda anyway, had it all gone as planned anyway. The job description, I thought, needed to be in for discussion today at this meeting so that we could get it in front of council to approve funding. And that was a completely not realistic plan. That's what I learned from Jillian yesterday, that this really, the council doesn't necessarily have any money at this point to allocate towards this job, perhaps until the 2025 year. So being that it didn't make it onto today's agenda, and being that we probably need to wait till the 2025 budget is really drafted, I think that it would make sense for the Hearth Arts on Bowen to create a 8-month contract from September through till June for the first season of the community center, to be sure that there is someone to facilitate, populate, and coordinate the arts and cultural calendar. And we would use our own resources, the endowment fund and any grant funds that we're successful in getting. And we will make sure that there is arts and culture happening in the theater, the Bowen Theater, for that first year, local and incoming. And that would give the JMC time to draft a proper larger job description, if that's what's seen fit after the first few months of operations, and approach council properly for a larger budget for a real long-term budget allocation.
Kim just came.
Is that enough?
You know, it's a topic for discussion, but I really just think we just need an approval to proceed so that we can put a contract out and have someone in operation by the fall. Because at this rate, we will not, clearly, with this whole process of trying to approach council. We're on draft 3.2, from draft 1 to draft 2 to draft 3.1. Now we're on to 3.2. We can't move forward without this getting a really large allocation of time by this JMC. And is it realistic at this point? And we could see how our funding our ask goes, and we just move forward, and we know that we have the first 2 components of that job description well in place. The first one was the person to coordinate, and the second is to make sure that we have a Hearth Presents curator, and the piece that would be left out is the piece that the municipality, we need to seek funding through the municipality for the event programmer, the event coordinator and the booking manager. And I think that's the piece that needs to be left out, while people like Jillian and Lee are really helping to make that system robust and workable before they can really hand it off to another person who's not even a municipal employee. That's my proposal.
And we will have the answer with that BC Arts Council grant sort of in August. We don't want to waste that grant by saying, oh, sorry, we're not ready. We don't need the funds. Yeah.
I support that idea. I like that idea. And I just wanted to provide a bit of additional information about perhaps the timing and the format that the requested council could and should make. And I would recommend that presentation be combined with the annual report that the Hearth does to council on the activities taken throughout the year, and then added on as what we're planning for what we'd like, and this is our ask for next year, and that happens sometime in November, which would make it into the 2025 budget. That would then be put forth to council for recommendation.
So just to be clear, if this goes forward, we're adding that additional fee onto the existing core funding agreement?
You're gonna make a proposal and ask for what you want.
So you'd like to see it that way as opposed to a separate agreement?
I just think it would be well timed to put the two together. You're showing what you've done and here's what we want.
Okay, I think that,
And then the timing for the budget process works with that November time slot where you
sure,
typically make that presentation to council.
I think that the Hearth Board needs to decide if it's one core funding agreement or two separate core funding agreements.
Why would it be separate?
Well, maybe
I
they'll
don't
just,
know what
I don't know,
agreement
I don't know.
that's
I think
in
that
place.
the board needs to discuss that to see if they want to amalgamate that.
Well,
core
we can
funding.
take the suggestion to
Yeah.
the board, but
Yeah.
thank you, because that does make sense in terms of a method of proposal, because we are looking for process. So thank you so much for such a concrete, statement of process. That's very helpful, right? Because that is the piece we keep slipping a little bit past us. And with that, then I would like to say that the JMC really needs to take this, the proposal of what we would be bringing in that November, what we would be bringing in the November proposal needs to be prepared and signed off by this JMC. Like, we need to have a vision. And so September meeting and October meeting would have to have a good allocation of time to that discussion. Would we all agree on that? Is that true?
And who would be the person then that would take on that third part of that job description until the future? Because it would be someone from BIM staff that would be doing the bookings.
Or a combination of people
Or combination.
making it work.
Right.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
piecemealing it together. And one thing that would be helpful is just trying to lay out the financial elements of it in almost like a table format, like a spreadsheet format, because I'm a bit confused in terms of how much is being requested from the community versus how much is allocated.
Well, I think sometimes that would depend on grant funding that comes in too.
Right, but right here.
The only thing we know for sure is the endowment fund. That's the only thing that's
Right.
solid.
Yeah, and so right now, we know we got $10,000 from the endowment fund. And we anticipate and hopeful for 30,000 from the grant.
25, because 5,000 is for purchase of computer and other hard expenses.
Okay,
Okay, so 25 towards that, yeah.
Okay, and then 25. Okay, and so that's 55.
That's assuming we get our full ask.
Yeah, but yeah. And so then the delta is another 10, or so then what is the ask of it?
Well, what we've put, if you scroll down, I think I put it at 60,
50 to 65,000
yeah.
at the very bottom.
So we're thinking we're looking at at least a third of the cost of the contract or the hire.
Right, so what I would
A
just.
third of the workload.
What I would just request is that if it's laid out in that kind of line by line, so whether you have, whether you have the 60 or like the 50 or the 65,000 as the total up top, but then you're sort of minusing off like, okay, we know we've got 10 for sure, we're anticipating 30, so then that leaves X. And X is the request of council.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just laying it out really crystal clear so that.
Right. And Liam, I have a question for you. Is it worth, thank you for laying that out clearly. Is it worth to put in as part of one of those line items, some of the money from revenue being generated from the facility? Or is the plan just to have all of that revenue go directly to council? And then the council would be allocating it. So in other words, it's going into like the revenue generated from the facility is going into general revenues and then it gets allocated out. Or this is more of a philosophical thing about saying that a certain percentage of the revenue generated would be earmarked towards that position.
It's a philosophical thing, so it's general revenue, and then like it's nice to be able to say that the position and the municipal contribution to it is fully covered by revenue coming in. But it's not directly tied that way.
I see.
So, I mean, we want to be able to say that as much of the use of the space is being offset by revenue from the space, but we know that is it's going to be subsidized. And so I don't know that we have to go through some exercise to clearly identify like which items are actually subsidized versus like, let's just say arbitrarily, the cost to operate the facility is $500,000. And let's say we pull in like $300,000. So we know that we're subsidizing the operations of the facility to the tune of $200,000. And so if we want to then say, well, the salary or the municipal contribution towards the salary to the pad is fully paid by revenue generation, I said, well, we can say that.
But then there's an additional
It's-
30,000 subsidy
Yeah.
for the rest of the operation.
Yeah, so it does, I don't think we want to put that as a line item that, oh, revenue generation is gonna offset this here, because I don't think it's not necessarily true. So I'd rather just keep it simple and just, you have the salary expectation, call it 65 minus the 10K for the known income, the unknown 30,000 or 25, and then the delta of what that is, and that's the ask.
Thank you.
And so it's just really crystal clear that like, okay, we're asking for this much, and this is how we came up to that number.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. And we never have gotten to the conversation that the group approves the job description. So it's hard to allocate
Right.
the exact, those line items with dollar figures attached to it, has been waiting in some ways to get this kind of general, like, yes, we think that the description that you've created covers the points. We haven't gotten there yet. I was hoping today we would, so that we could approach council with that more, with the spreadsheet, but we're not going to. This is all I want said at this meeting, that we all approve, that the JMC sort of approves that the Hearth will move ahead at next week's board meeting with submitting building a contract that would take us through the first presentation season. In the worlds of presentation, that's usually either, let's call it July 1st to June 30th. Sometimes, right, it can be September 1st to August 31st, but it's that September to June that would be considered the main presentation. Whether your summer festivals get accrued to the year before or after is the only variable.
The grant cycles. as
Well, and we typically don't get budget approval till May, so.
Exactly. So it puts us in a good place,
Yeah.
right? And that next, if we're able to fold this into a single position that is a hire, it would start maybe July 1st, where the approval has been put in place and we've gotten through. Yeah, okay?
Let's do a vote.
Let's do a vote.
About it.
So that no one has ever said that we just moved ahead and
Yeah.
hired without anyone thinking it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, like, we can approve you guys doing things that we can approve of, like,
Well, I think what we can do is
Committee supports the Hearth moving forward with this, yeah.
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 So JMC support
Support.
for the Hearth moving forward with creating a job description for this coming performance season, September 2024 to May 2025.
As a contract, yes, 24-25 season.
Creating a job description and contract.
It's a contract.
And filling it.
And filling it.
Yeah, so.
And contract filling or hiring. And hiring. For this coming forward, it's to program the
Okay,
Well, you
center
can see it
performance.
In that job description, the first two the first two.
yeah, the first two items will cover, instead of 1, 2, and 3, what I sent you, it would just be 1 and 2.
So just for the recommendation. There's lots of words there, okay. So, for attracting.
Actually, you could probably just say attracting and supporting arts presenters, because that in a way encompasses the Hearth Present series as well, just for the simplicity of the vote.
For attracting and supporting arts presenters. To the Bowen Island. No, yeah, community center. That the JMC support the Hearth moving forward with creating a job description, contracting and hiring for this coming performance season. September 24 to May 25 for attracting and supporting arts presenters to the Bowen Island Community Center. I will take the
You
ground.
don't want to call and populating the arts and cultural calendar? Or you think it's enough?
I think
Okay.
for the
We're good.
moment, it's conceptual anyway, we're not outlining all the tasks.
This is a vote and then we're gonna have another, one. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Lord, because we have to talk about it coming up in September, like it needs to be on the agenda for September, right? Because we can't do that presentation in November without.
Okay, can I ask for a mover for this vote? Judy. Seconded by, thank you. Okay, any last discussion? Okay, calling the vote, all in favor? Anybody opposed? No. Wait, was that opposed?
Yeah,
It was that before.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I move that we ensure that this item is on the agenda for September. The larger.
On the
job
council
description.
agenda?
No, on our JMC agenda. Or, oh, I could just bring it? Do I need to do anything right now?
Bring it, I'll put it in my planner and just like.
Okay, we do it just like agenda build.
Him and I.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, thank you, Gal. Next up, do we need to move to a closed meeting now? Any other stuff or?
Yeah, there's
stuff?
no,
Information items, question period. I mean, there's nobody here.
information items, there's nobody here and we're gonna talk about meeting date. Do you wanna talk about meeting date now?
Yeah, we should do that before we.
You know what, that doesn't need to be on YouTube, so
No, it's fine. Judy, you had a quick question.
And move, no,
Oh,
we're gonna
no.
move the recommendation. Community Center Joint Management Committee moved to a closed meeting pursuant to section 90 sub 1 sub K of the Community Charter. Meetings that may or must be closed to the public. For K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council or this committee could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Do we have a second?
Anybody?
I don't think I can.
You can.
A second.
No one else is.
Okay,
You have to read.
any discussion? All in favor?
Yeah.